Good to see you.
Well, very good to meet you.
And
very good to meet you.
Thank you.
Obviously,
And
great name.
well, thank you. And thank you for giving this interview to
Not at all, not at all. Thank you for doing this. I love that expression. Walk with me, walk with me. Yes, exactly. Let's do this. Are you based here now?
Yeah, I've been here for 22 years.
Martin, have you got a phone on you?
Ethiopia is a stain on our conscience because the facts show that access to Tigray, where we have been wanting to have 100 trucks every day arrive in Tigray to meet the needs of the over 5 million people there, we've never reached that. We've never had that, and it's been about 10% of that over the last 2 or 3 months. So the consequences are almost certainly what you have just described, where people are tipping into famine, where medical supplies are very, very scarce indeed. So the reason I'm so pleased to do this interview is precisely to call international attention to this situation and to call for help.
I'm sure you recalled the images of Ethiopia's famine in the 1980s. Is there a fear that Tigray's heading there again?
It's always in the back of your mind, never mind in Ethiopia, but in any of these countries affected by prospects of famine, because famine is a phenomenon which now we understand better, that when famine kicks in, when it starts, it's viral. And the initial symptoms of that is people dying from disease, not from hunger, because it is the lack of food and the lack of proper nutrition erodes health, and we see the most vulnerable, children of course, as well as pregnant or lactating mothers, dying first. That's what keeps people awake at night, is worrying about whether that's what is in prospect and in prospect soon.
What will happen in the coming weeks and months in Tigray if you're only still getting in 10% of what's needed?
Well, already we're seeing malnutrition levels going up. So what's called the global malnutrition level in Tigray now is over 22%, which is roughly the same as we saw in Somalia in 2011 at the start of the Somali famine. So it's very significant. Anything over 15% is very significant. What we'll see is the effect of hunger and starvation coupled with the problems of medical problems, of chronic diseases, lack of vaccinations. 200,000 children have missed their vaccinations, for example, in Tigray alone. So the combination of lack of medical care, most of the health institutions there are inoperable, and lack of food will mean that people will start to die. About whether that's what is in prospect soon.
There are almost no images of the crisis reaching the outside world. For people watching and reading this interview, how would you best describe the hunger and deprivation now occurring there?
You really have to have a feat of imagination. And as you were saying, the images in the minds of some of us at least from the 80s are reminders of what could happen in the worst case, and we fervently hope is not happening at present. I wasn't searched when I returned to Addis. And I think that issue of being... For those of us for whom people's suffering is off camera, we need to imagine what it must be like if last year's harvest, 90% of it failed. The coming harvest, at least half of it will fail. So people have been eating roots and flowers and plants instead of a normal, steady meal. Entitled to humanitarian assistance. So I've had many, many conversations with the government of Ethiopia on this, because at the moment, the war doesn't look as if it's finishing anytime soon. The Secretary General called for a ceasefire, as you know, in the Security Council about 5 weeks ago. And of course, everyone who cares about Ethiopia wants to see that ceasefire happen as soon as possible, not least the people affected by that conflict. It's imperative. and it's overdue. He has discussed with me in the past, and his deputy discussed with me last week. What we would all like to see, I don't know if it'll happen, of course, but what we'd all like to see is that with that inauguration, that we would see new leadership leading Ethiopia away from the abyss that it's peering into at the moment. That the national dialogue process, which he has discussed with me in the past, and his deputy discussed with me last week, that needs to happen. It needs to be coherent, it needs to be inclusive, and it needs to be soon. To Tigray, because the battle lines are very, very active indeed. And that's where the future of Ethiopia is at risk, because the more this war goes on, the more worried we all are about the stability of Ethiopia in that incredibly important region. Ethiopia's stability and unity is of the highest importance, not just for its own people, as you know, but for that region. And that's why we'd like to see leadership taking us in a different direction.
Many thanks for giving this interview to AP and AP Television.
Thanks very much indeed.